What's going on, Not Move Nation? Welcome to the Not Move podcast. Today's December 1st at 10:34 a.m. Eastern Time. I'm here with JB Sport Talk. We're going to break down that New York Giants at New England Patriot game tonight. First and foremost, thank you to our supporters, subscribers, and followers. We really appreciate you guys here at the Not Move podcast. And a special thank you to our sponsors, BetUS, MyBookie.ag, Walmart.com, Open Goal, the MLB and NFL Pro Shops, and W Energy Drinks. All right, let's get into it. Weather concerns. I just hear that the temperatures are supposed to be in the 20s. So that's about it for the weather concerns. I got that information from rotogrinders.com, ROTO grinders.com. And the all-time series between these two teams, they've played 14 times throughout history. What's going on, Blessed Up, P? They've played 14 times throughout history, and the series is tied 7-7 between these teams. These teams have played 3 all-time games in the month of December, and the road team won each game by 3 points or less. So if that trend continues, the Giants win this game by 3 points or less. The last that I saw, New England's favored by 7.5 points, and the over-under is 46.5. New England has won 3 out of 7 all-time games by 8+ points against the New York Giants, the games that they did win. Out of the home games New England has played against the Giants, they won 2 out of 3 of those home games by 8+ points. The Giants are 7-5 against the spread this season. The Patriots are 7-4-1 against the spread, so technically the Patriots are better against the spread, but the Giants are 4-3 against the spread as a road underdog, whereas the Patriots are 2-1 against the spread as a home favorite. The Giants are 7-5 to the over this season. I mentioned that the over-under is 46.5. The Giants are 7-5 to the over, 4-3 to the over as a road underdog. And New England 6-6 to the over this season. 3 out of 3. They're 3-2 to the over as a home favorite. 3 out of the last 10 meetings between these teams have had a grand total of 47+ total points scored between both teams. Then 4 out of 14 all-time meetings between these teams have had 47+ total points scored. The Giants carry a 2-10 record into this matchup. The Giants have lost 6 games in a row. They lost 34-27 at Detroit last week. And then New England. New England is 10-2 this season, and they've won 9 games in a row. So New England's hot right now. The Giants are cold. Overall, I give New England a slight passing advantage in this game. I don't see a clear rushing advantage for either team, but I would lean towards the Giants to have that rushing advantage. And then I see a lot of other advantages here for New England, a good-sized third down conversion advantage, slight red zone conversion advantage, slight red zone attempts per game advantage. But I do give the Giants a slight sacks on the quarterback advantage. And I forgot to look at the turnover differential. Let me just look at that real quick. The Giants are -6, and the Patriots are 0. So New England has the turnover differential advantage. JB, what are your first thoughts on this game, man? Do you think that there's any way the Giants pull off the upset tonight? And do you think this is going to be a higher scoring game or a lower scoring game?
Man, I kind of got like it's crazy. So I'm kind of like going both ways. Like I think it's gonna be a higher scoring game. I think it's gonna be a higher scoring game. And I like Jackson Dart and the Giants. The Giants.
I've heard a lot of people talking about the Giants possibly pulling off this up.
Even shout out to New England Shakeup on TikTok. Shouted out that if everything serves right tonight, the Giants should take down the Patriots. History. Let's go.
Yeah, that'd be pretty amazing there.
Facts.
So let's dive into some player props. Let's start off. Both of these teams call a high percentage of rushing plays compared to the other teams in the league. When I looked before the season or before the week started, the Giants ranked 24th in passing play percentage. New England ranked 25th in passing play percentage. So both of these teams call a higher percentage of rushing plays relative to other teams in the league. With that being said, New England is very good against the run in regards to rushing yards allowed per game. They ranked second best in the NFL before the week started. The Giants ranked last. The Giants ranked 32nd in rushing yards allowed per game. Now, believe it or not, the Giants actually accumulate more rushing yards per game. They rank 9th in that category, whereas New England ranks 19th. So overall, I gotta say that what the Patriots do best is what the Giants defend worse against. So that makes me want to talk about these three players for the Patriots rushing props tonight. The Giants, they've allowed the most rushing yards to quarterbacks this season. Drake May, over 21 and a half rushing yards. He's gone over that line in half of his games this season, 6 out of 12 games. He's had 20-plus rushing yards in 7 out of 12 games this season, 15-plus in the same amount, 7 out of 12 games this season. He's had 10-plus rushing yards in 11 out of 12 games this season. So I know some people like to take alternate lines, and if that's the case tonight, 10-plus rushing yards for Drake May in 11 out of 12 games this season. He has never played against the New York Giants. All right. And he has more rushing yards per attempt at home than on the road in 2 career seasons that he's played in the NFL. Not a big sample size, right? But that is a positive trend if you're thinking May goes over those rushing yards tonight. Also, he has more yards per carry on turf than grass in both of the career seasons that he's played in, which is another good trend, considering that this game is being played on turf. What do you think about Drake May tonight, JB? Do you think he gets 22-plus rushing yards? Where do you see him?
No, I don't think he gets 22 plus rushing yards. I think he goes under that on the ground. As far as through the air, though, I think he slices and dices them pretty well. Um, I think he got it, bro. I think he tears him up tonight, especially with Diggs.
We'll go back to the rushing props with the other two guys that I had my eye on for New England, Ramondre Stevenson and Travion Henderson. But since we're on Drake May right now, let's talk about his passing props real quick, okay? The Giants, I mentioned that before the week started, they were the worst team in the NFL at defending yards allowed per game to rushing attacks. They're not that great at preventing passing yards either. They ranked 23rd in passing yards allowed per game before the week started. I did mention New England likes to focus on calling a high percentage of rushing plays relative to other teams in the league, but this team still ranks 6th best in passing yards per game. With that being said, Drake May over under 245 and a half passing yards. The Giants have allowed the 7th most passing yards to quarterbacks before the week started. Drake May has gone over that 245.5 passing yard line in 9 out of 12 games this season. So 75% of his games, he's gone over that mark. He's had 225 plus passing yards in 10 out of 12 games this season. He's had 200 plus passing yards in every single game this season. Once again, he's never played against the New York Giants, and he has more passing yards per attempt on grass than turf in both career seasons that he's played in. That is a small sample size, but that is an unfavorable trend. Man, yeah. I mean, if New England runs away with this game early, I'm concerned about Drake May going over those passing yards. But, 9 out of 12 times this season, that looks pretty solid.
Yeah.
But, if you want a 100% success rate, now we saw McCaffrey not reach those 40-plus receiving yards yesterday, and McCaffrey had gone over that in every game this season, 12 out of 12 games, right?
Yep.
Now, this isn't the same situation, but it's close. 9 out of 12 games, May's gone over those passing yards, but the 200-plus, yeah, every game this season, he's hit 200-plus. I would feel more comfortable with him at 200-plus passing yards, but would I lean towards him going over the 245.5 passing yards? Probably, especially since you're thinking that he does well through the air today, JB. And then the passing touchdowns, usually that over-under's at 1.5. He's had 2+ passing touchdowns in 8 out of 12 games this season. He's had 1+ touchdown pass in 11 out of 12 games this season. He's only had 3 touchdown passes in 2 games this season. What do you think about his touchdown passes, man? You think he gets how many do you expect from Drake May tonight?
Oh man. I'm gonna say he gets a 3-piece.
A 3-piece. Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna call a 3-piece. I'm gonna call a 3-piece on him tonight. I like Drake May, man.
Chat, how many do you guys think Drake May gets tonight? 2+ passing touchdowns in 8 out of 12 this season, 1+ in 11 out of 12, 3+ in 2 out of 12. And then Drake May passing attempts over under 30.5. He's only gone over that in 5 out of 12 games this season, but he has gone over that line in his last 3 games. He went over that line in 3 home games and 2 road games. So more times than not, he's gone over the 30.5 passing attempts in home games. He's averaging a little over 29 pass attempts per game this season, and the Giants have allowed about 35 pass attempts per game, which equals out to an average of around 32.37 pass attempts for Drake May today. He won in all 3 of the games that he went over, and then lost in 2 of the games that he went over. So he lost 3 of the games that he went over, won 3 of the games that he went over those pass attempts, and lost 2 of the games that he went over the passing attempts. Do you think Drake May, throws the ball 31+ times tonight, JB? Which way are you leaning on that? I would think that, since you.
Oh, my bad. I said yeah. I didn't realize I was muted. Yeah. I see him hitting that, if not over.
Yeah. So out of those 3 props, man, 200+ I feel comfortable with, but I would still lean towards him going over those passing yards. I'd have to lean towards him getting the 2+ passing touchdowns. I'd feel more comfortable with 1+, and I'd have to lean towards him going over those passing attempts as well. Pretty much everything with Drake May. I like all of his props, but at least the data,
Yeah. Drake May.
So let's talk about Travion Henderson and Ramondre Stevenson a little bit here. Before I get into the statistics of it, JB, who are you naturally feeling like has a better game? Do you think Travion Henderson has a better chance of getting 65+ rushing yards, or Ramondre Stevenson getting 25+ rushing yards? Which one do you feel like is more capable of getting into the end zone in this game as well?
Oh man, Henderson's been doing his thing this year, hadn't he?
Yeah, he's the touchdown leader for New England Out of all
Yeah.
positional players this season, he has 6. Ramondre Stevenson has 3.
Yup. I'm gonna go with uh. I just said his name, dude. What did I just say? Catching blanks. Yeah, no. I mean, dude, there's a reason why he's the leader for a reason. I mean, dude, he's the one getting. He's got the nose for it. He's getting in there. Yeah, I don't see why anybody would steer away from that.
Yeah. Travion Henderson, over under 64.5 rushing yards. So there's a couple things I want to talk about with New England's rush defense as well. Before the week started, the Giants' rush defense. Before the week started, the Giants had allowed the most 20-plus yard rushing gains this season to opposing teams. The Giants also allowed the most 40-plus yard rushing gains this season to opposing teams. Stevenson has had 2 20-plus yard rushes and no 40-plus yard rushes this season. Henderson has had 3 20-plus yard rushes and 2 40-plus yard rushes, and Drake May has had 2 20-plus yard rushes and 0 40-plus yard rushes. So I think who benefits the most? I mean, all of these guys benefit off of that. But I think the one that benefits the most here is Travion Henderson. Not only does he have more 20-plus yard rushes than either of the other two, but he has 2 40-plus yard rushes, and the other two do not have any. The Giants have allowed, before the week started, the most rushing yards to running backs this season. Travion Henderson, over under 64.5 rushing yards. He's only gone over that line in 3 out of 12 games this season. If we brought that down to 60 plus, we're looking at 4 out of 12 games this season. 50 plus, 5 out of 12 games. 40 plus, still 5 out of 12 games. Once we get to 30 plus rushing yards for Stevenson, we're looking at half of his games. He's reached that mark. And then 20 plus rushing yards would be the safer play. He's got 20 plus rushing yards in 10 out of 12 games this season. I'm a little concerned about, only going over that line in 3 out of 12 games this season. But man, I think, shop is pretty much open here for the rushing attack for New England. Ramondre Stevenson, over under 24.5 rushing yards. He has a higher success rate at going over that line than Travion Henderson does this season with his rushing line. Ramondre Stevenson has gone over in 4 out of 9 games this season. If we brought that down to 20 plus, still looking at 4 out of 9 games. 10 plus rushing yards for Stevenson. We have 8 out of 9 games this season. And then he has played one career game against the Giants, and he had 98 rushing yards and 1 touchdown in his only career game against the Giants. And Travion Henderson, I forgot to mention that he also played a game against the Giants and scored a touchdown in that game. I'm not sure where that ran off to here in my notes, but I want to know how many rushing yards he had in that game too. Travion Henderson versus Giants. Let me just look this up real quick so you guys have that information. Has he? Am I mistaken here? Did I make a typo? I mean, it happens from time to time. It's been a long week. So no, Travion Henderson has not. So I probably meant to put that on not sure why I had that up there. It is receiving statistics, but yeah, just so we're clear, Travion Henderson doesn't have any career games against the Giants, but I do like the fact that Ramondre Stevenson does, and he did score a touchdown in his only career game against the Giants. Also, when I'm looking at how many rushing touchdowns the Giants have allowed to running backs this season here at fantasy.nfl.com, they've allowed 12. The Bills have allowed the most with 15. So the Giants, they've been allowing a good amount of touchdowns to that running back position and receiving touchdowns to running backs. So I think both of these guys, are capable of getting in the end zone tonight. The question is, which one? Maybe both. If you were going to play both, I would see, how many times they've scored a touchdown in the same game. So Stevenson has only scored a touchdown in 2 games this season against Buffalo, at Buffalo, and at Tennessee. So he hasn't had a home touchdown this season. But let's see if Henderson scored a touchdown against Tennessee. No. Against Buffalo. No. So they haven't scored a touchdown in the same game this season. So, just based on that alone, I'd maybe, choose one. For me, I got to go with the guy that has proven that he can get into the end zone against the Giants. Not saying that Travion Henderson can't, but I like that. I like the fact that Stevenson has scored a touchdown in his only career game. Also worth noting, though, Travion Henderson does have a receiving touchdown this season. I mentioned that, the Giants are vulnerable to receiving touchdowns allowed to running backs as well, but Ramondre Stevenson does not. But to elaborate on Ramondre Stevenson's rushing yards, he has more yards per attempt when his team loses rather than wins or ties in 4 out of 5 career seasons. This is the season where that he has more rushing yards per carry when his team wins or ties. So if that trend continues, I would say that there is a better chance that Stevenson has 25 plus rushing yards if the Patriots lose this game. Also, Stevenson has more rushing yards per attempt on grass than turf in 4 out of 5 seasons, which is a bad trend considering this game is on turf. So, yeah, I'm going to have to lean towards Henderson going over his rushing yard line more than I will Ramondre Stevenson, although I think Stevenson punches one into the end zone, has a better chance of getting into the end zone than Henderson does in this game. Now let's talk about the rushing attack for the Giants. All right. The Giants, they rank 9th in rushing yards per game, and they rank 14th in passing yards per game before the week started. I mentioned that they call a higher percentage of rushing plays relative to other teams in the league. So, the question is, are the Giants going to be able to run the ball against New England, who ranks 2nd best in rushing yards allowed per game this season? What are your thoughts, JB? Who's got to be the go-to guy tonight for the Giants in that rushing attack? Is it going to be does it have to be a group effort here, or does one man have to take over? Dart, Tyrone Tracy, Devin Singletary.
I think it's gonna be a group effort. I think they're gonna they'll be able to attack them right through, like you said, with Dart, Tracy. I mean, they got some legs over there, man. They bring some excitement, and I like them. I think both of them will be. I think it'll be a tandem, like you said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it'll most likely be a tandem as well. But New England has allowed the 3rd fewest rushing yards to running backs this season. They were not in the top or bottom 10 in regards to rushing yards allowed to quarterbacks this season. So I think that's probably their biggest vulnerability to a rushing attack here. I think Jackson Dart probably has the best chance, maybe not to accumulate the most rushing yards, since Tyrone Tracy's over-under is about 20 yards higher. But I think Dart's in a better position here. But let's talk about the statistics real quick. Jackson Dart has gone over the 28.5 rushing yard line in 5 out of 7 games this season that he had at least one pass attempt. He had 11 rushing yards and 17 rushing yards in the 2 games that he didn't go over this line. Jackson Dart has actually had 50 plus rushing yards in the same amount of games that he's had 29 plus rushing yards. So if you like to do those ladders, alternate lines, I think this could be a good spot for that. Um, and then, he's never played against New England through his short career. And he has more rushing yards per attempt on turf than grass this season. Small sample size, but it's better that he has that trends in his favor tonight rather than against. He has more rushing yards per attempt when his team loses. So I think Jackson Dart has a better chance of going over those rushing yards if the Giants lose this game as well. I think, even if they win, he's got a good chance to go over this line. But he has an even better chance if the Giants lose. And then he has more rushing yards per attempt on the road this season. And believe it or not, Jackson Dart has had a rushing touchdown in 6 out of 7 games, in games that he's had at least one pass attempt in this season. When I'm looking at New England and how many rushing touchdowns they've allowed to quarterbacks this season, they have allowed 1. Do you think that Jackson Dart finds his way into the end zone tonight, JB? He leads this team in touchdowns right now. Now, Scattaboo is tied with him, but he's not available in this game.
Yeah, I do actually. I like Jackson Dart. I think Jackson Dart gives them the ability to shred him. He gives them that dual threat. Something that New England's got to account for. They do with Josh Allen, but Jackson Dart's something different.
And for those of you who are interested in a first anytime touchdown scorer, I had to look up some information for this game. So the Giants, as a team, scored the first touchdown of the game in 9 out of 12 games that they've played in this season, compared to New England, who has scored the first touchdown in 3 out of 12 games this season. So if that trend continues tonight, the Giants score the first touchdown of this game. And who has scored the most first touchdowns for the Giants this season? It's going to be Jackson Dart. He scored the first touchdown for the New York Giants in 3 games this season, and he was the first touchdown scorer of the game in 2 of them. All right. Theo Johnson actually scored the first touchdown for the New York Giants in 2 games this season, and he was the first touchdown scorer of the game in both of them. So Theo Johnson has 2 first touchdowns this season, and then these other guys have 1, Bellinger, Singletary, and Wan'Dale Robinson. So I thought that was some pretty cool information there. And then, just to touch up on New England, it was Douglas who scored New England's first touchdown in 3 games this season. But he was the first touchdown scorer for New England in 2 of those games. So 2 of the games where New England scored the first touchdown, I mentioned that New England has scored the first touchdown in 3 out of 12 games this season. In 2 of those games, Douglas was the first touchdown scorer. So I thought that was some pretty good information. Also, Mac Hollins scored the first touchdown in one of these games, but he was not. And he was the first touchdown scorer of that other game. Mac Hollins was. And then Hunter Henry has scored 3 first touchdowns for the Patriots, but never scored the first touchdown of the game. And then Marcus Jones, I think he returned a punt for New England or a kickoff, and he was not the first touchdown scorer of the game. Anyways, I thought that was some pretty cool information there. So if I have to lean towards, first touchdown score in this game, it's got to be Dart. And then Theo Johnson. But if I had to go with a New England guy, Douglas or Mac Hollins. But let's talk about Tyrone Tracy, Devin Singletary, rushing yards. Which one do you expect to have the bigger impact in this game, JB? Tyrone Tracy or Devin Singletary?
Tyrone Tracy. A lot of people don't like him, especially people in New York. I think he's awesome. I'd be happy to have Tyrone Tracy as a chief.
Tyrone Tracy over
Yes,
under
sir.
49.5 rushing yards. He's gone over that line in only 3 out of 10 games this season, but he's gone over this line in his last 3 games, guys. He's had 40 plus rushing yards in 4 out of 10 games this season, 30 plus rushing yards in 5 out of 10 games this season, 20 plus rushing yards in 7 out of 10 games this season, and 10 plus rushing yards in 9 out of 10 games this season. He's never played against New England, and he has more rushing yards per attempt on grass than turf in both career seasons that he's played in the NFL, which is a bad trend. So I'm a little hesitant on Tracy hitting those rushing yards tonight against a good New England rush defense, and I don't like his success rate this season. I don't like this trend where he's had more rushing yards per attempt on grass than turf. So let's look at Singletary here. Now, he only has a 25% success rate on his over-under rushing yard line, which is set at 29.5. Last that I checked, he's only gone over that in 3 out of 12 games this season. 20-plus rushing yards for Singletary. We're looking at 6 out of 12, so half of his games, 10-plus in 75% of his games. Here's the good thing about Singletary is that he's gone over the 29.5 rushing yard line in 7 out of 8 career games against New England. The game that he did not, he had exactly 29. So if you can take that hook off, if you guys like Singletary tonight, if you take that hook off, he's had 29-plus rushing yards in every career game against New England. He scored a touchdown in 3 out of 8 career games against New England, and he actually had a 2-touchdown game in one of those games. He has more yards per carry in games that his team wins or ties rather than loses in 6 out of 7 career seasons. So if you do like the Giants to win tonight, I think he has a better chance of going over those rushing yards. But yeah, if you like the Giants tonight, I think he has a better chance of going over those rushing yards if the Giants win. But even if they lose, I feel like he's got a pretty good chance at doing that, just based on these statistics, right? And I don't want you guys to just necessarily come in here blindly tail everything I'm talking about. Heck, if you even like fading what I'm talking about, that would have worked well yesterday with that McCaffrey statistic. 12 out of 12 games, he had hit that 40-plus receiving yard line. So, but let's keep rolling here. I talked about – I want to keep going on here with the Patriots passing attack, all right? JB, who do you see having the biggest impact in the game tonight for the Patriots in that receiving game? Do you think it's going to be, Stephon Diggs, Mac Hollins, Butte, Douglas, Hunter Henry, Austin Hooper? Who are we thinking? JB? All right.
Yeah.
Who do you see having the biggest, impact in the passing attack tonight for New England? I forgot to mention, Travion Henderson even, or who do you see having the biggest impact in this game? Is it going to be Stephon Diggs?
Diggs and I like what's his face? Oh no, he went elsewhere. Never mind. Yeah, I like Diggs. I like Diggs. And Henderson. I like Henderson. I'm big. I want Diggs. Diggs. Dude, you just can't not pick Diggs, right? Number 1 wide receiver. Every time he's been in that position, he's performed. He's having a pretty good year this year. I think Diggs is the man.
Yep. He does lead this team in target share this season. Next man up is going to be Hunter Henry. Third man up, Mac Hollins. Then Douglas. Travion Henderson, Butte. And it seems like every time I look up at the TV, Butte is in the end zone. Now, maybe I'm not looking at the TV enough, but he does have 5 touchdowns this season, man. And he's tied with Hunter Henry in second place for New England touchdown leaders, right behind Henderson with 6. But let's talk about a couple of things here. First of all, the Giants have allowed the 8th most 20-plus yard receptions this season before the week started, and the 10th most 40-plus yard receptions this season. Stephon Diggs has 9 20-plus yard receptions. So does Butte. He has 9. Neither of them have a 40-plus yard reception this season. Mac Hollins has a 40-yard-plus reception, and Stevenson does. So if you're looking for that big play, my first look, 40-plus yard gain, my first look is going to be Mac Hollins or Ramondre Stevenson. But if we're looking at consistency here, the 2 most consistent guys that are getting those 20-plus yard receiving gains for New England is going to be Stephon Diggs and Butte, with Henry at getting 7, and then Mac Hollins with 6. Just worth noting, Stevenson does have 2 20-plus yard receptions this season. So I feel like, if New England, statistically, if New England wants to accumulate some big gains in this game, they'll be able to do so. The Giants have allowed the 2nd most receiving yards to wide receivers this season and the 3rd most receptions. Stephon Diggs, over under 49.5 receiving yards. He's gone over this line in 5 out of 12 games this season. He's had 40-plus receiving yards in half of his games. 30-plus, we're looking at 75% of his games. He's got 30-plus receiving yards. 20-plus receiving yards, 11 out of 12. He's gone over that. If you're thinking about Diggs for 100-plus for one reason or another tonight, he's had that in 25% of his games this season. But he's only gone over the 49.5 receiving yard line in 1 out of 4 career games against the Giants. If we took that down to 40-plus, he's gone over that in 3 out of 4 career games against the Giants. The game that he did not reach 40-plus receiving yards against the Giants was a game that he had 19 receiving yards. And then he has not scored a touchdown in 4 career games against New York Giants. And if you like New England to win this game tonight, I do think Stephon Diggs has a better chance of going over these receiving yards, the 49.5 line, since he has more yards per catch in games that his team wins or ties rather than loses in 8 out of 11 career seasons. Also worth mentioning, Stephon Diggs is the 2nd leader for New England. I mentioned that he's the leader in target share for New England, but in regards to red zone targets, he is in 2nd place. I believe he's behind Hunter Henry, right? Hunter Henry has 13 red zone targets this season compared to Stephon Diggs with 10. So, I mean, if you like New England tonight, I think there's a better chance for Stephon Diggs to go over those lines. Personally, I think I'd have to drop that down to 40-plus receiving yards to where at least I have a 50% success rate on him achieving that this season, and then a 75% success rate of him going over that line in 4 career games against the Giants. And then receptions for Diggs, 4.5 is that over under. He's gone over that in 6 out of 12 games this season. So he has a higher success rate with going over the 4.5 receptions than he does the 49.5 receiving yard line. He's had 4-plus receptions in 7 out of 12 games this season, 3-plus receptions in 11 out of 12 games this season. Excuse me. And he's gone over the 4.5 reception line in 2 out of 4 career games against the Giants. He's had 4-plus receptions in 3 out of 4 career games against the Giants. And if you're looking for a 100% success rate, he's had 3-plus receptions in all 4 career games against the Giants. Mac Hollins, over under 35.5 receiving yards. He's gone over that line in 4 out of 11 games this season, 30 plus in 5 out of 11 games, 20 plus 7 out of 11 games this season. He was targeted in 2 career games against the Giants, and he was targeted 1 time in each one of those games. In one of the games, he didn't even catch the ball or score a touchdown. In the other game, he had 1 reception for 5 yards and a touchdown. And he ranks 4th on New England in red zone targets with 5 this season. I think this is, kind of a sneakier player to score a touchdown tonight. But when I'm looking at the Giants, let's look at how many receiving touchdowns they have allowed to wide receivers this season. 12. They're about middle of the pack, and a lot of these teams have played an extra game than the Giants have. So maybe not something that I'm looking for is a wide receiver touchdown. Of course, anything can happen, but I'm really looking for New England to get touchdowns either through rushing, whether it's Drake May or Stevenson or Henderson. But if I had to go with an aerial attack, I got to stick with the red zone leader of this team, the red zone target leader. I think is the way I'm leaning here. Hunter Henry. I'll cover his prop here in a second, but he did have a touchdown in his only career game against the Giants. So I think Hunter Henry is definitely somebody worth considering tonight for an anytime touchdown. And let's touch up on Butte, and then I'll get to your question there, Blessed Up P. Butte over under 33.5 receiving yards. Let's backtrack and let's go touch up on Mac Hollins' reception line. Over under 2.5 receptions. He's gone over that line in 4 out of 11 games this season. He's had 2+ receptions in 8 out of 11 games this season, and 1+ reception. If you can find a book that lets you get it to 1+, you're looking at all 11 games. He's hit that this season. He was targeted in 2 career games against the Giants. I've already mentioned that. One game he didn't catch the ball. The other game he had 1 reception for 5 yards and a touchdown. So he's never gone over that reception line against the Giants. And the receiving line, he didn't go over that one either in 2 career games against the Giants. So I don't know. I'm a little not really a player I'm looking to target, but if I were to target him, it'd maybe be for an anytime touchdown. And then Butte, he's gone over the 33.5 receiving, wide receiver for New England. Kayshon Butte, he's gone over the 33.5 receiving yard line in half of his games this season. 20+ receiving yards in 6 out of 10 games. 10+ receiving yards in 9 out of 10 games this season. And then over under 2.5 receptions for Butte. He's hit that in 4 out of 10 games this season. 2+ receptions in 7 out of 10 games this season. 1+ reception in 9 out of 10 games this season. One of the big reasons why I go on these rants about the alternate lines is so you guys don't have to sit there and do the leg. Hold up. So you guys don't have to sit there and do the legwork. I mean, you guys can just, if you want, you can just listen, and you're getting numbers about their alternate lines without having to do, all this work. So I think that's pretty cool. Not to toot my own horn or anything, but it does take a lot of time to come up with this information, or at least it does for me. All right. AI just isn't sophisticated enough yet. Maybe it will be sometime, but they don't update their statistics quick enough. So I have to manually do this. Anyways, Douglas over under 15.5 receiving yards. He's the wide receiver for New England. He's gone over the 15.5. I think Blessed Up P was talking about Douglas. Douglas has exceeded 1.5 receptions in 15 of his last 19 games, 2.7 receptions game average. Thank you for that statistic there, Blessed Up P. Hope you're having a great day, man. So let's talk about Douglas's receiving yards, and then we'll touch on his receptions. Over under 15.5 receiving yards. He's gone over this line in 8 out of 11 games this season. In fact, he's gone over that line in 8 straight games. He's had 10-plus receiving yards in 8 out of 11 games this season as well. So if you were thinking about dropping Douglas from 15.5 to 10-plus, he still has the same success rate there. But he has gone over that 15.5 receiving yard line in his only career game that he's played against the Giants. He had 6 receptions for 49 yards. Also worth noting, I think I already did earlier, but he is the 3rd leader in red zone targets for New England with 6. To touch up on his receptions, Blessed Up P with another knowledge drop for us. Douglas under 1.5 receptions. He's gone over that in 8 out of 11 games this season. He's had 1+ reception in all games. And once again, he had, 6 receptions for 49 receiving yards in his only career game against the Giants. But he did not score a touchdown in that game. And I think you were talking about Henderson, right? Henderson. Receiving props. Let me go find your comment there, Ivan. Stevenson. Oh, that was his rushing yards. I thought you said something about somebody's receiving yards. Here we go. Henderson's receiving yards. Now, the Giants were not in the top 10 or bottom 10 when I was looking at the start of the week. They were not in the top 10 or bottom 10 in defending against yards allowed to running backs. So they're somewhere in the middle. However, they did allow the 5th most receptions to running backs before the week started. Travion Henderson, over under 14.5 receiving yards. I had a typo in my notes here, so I want to make sure that I got the correct information for you guys. I got that he's gone over this line in 6 out of 12 games this season. Let me double check that. 15 plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out of 12 games this season. He's hit that. He's had 10+ receiving yards in 7 out of 12 games this season. I think this other one is going to be for Singletary, or not Singletary, but Stevenson. Ramondre. And I don't even know if there are Stevenson receiving props up. There were not last night when I was looking. Looks like I see them now. Stevenson. They're kind of there, not really. Stevenson. They're there for the alternate line, but not the just regular line. I don't want to take up too much of you guys' time trying to find this information that I'm looking for. I was just kind of trying to find out Ramondre Stevenson versus Giant statistics, because that's where I'm guessing that I have Ramondre Stevenson. It's just going to take me just a second to find that game that he played against the Giants throughout his career. But while I'm doing that, I'd just like to say thank you to our sponsors, BetUS, MyBookie.ag, Walmart.com, Open Goal, the MLB and NFL Pro Shops, and Dubby Energy Drinks. Thank you guys so much. And thank you guys for joining today. Hope you guys are having a great day. Chat, who do you got in this game tonight? Who do you like to win this one? Giants or Patriots? I've heard a lot of chatter about the Giants, but yeah, just so we have a clear understanding here. Ramondre Stevenson, once again, he's played one career game against the Giants. If you were thinking about taking his receiving prop, I'm not sure what it's listed at, but he does have 5 receptions for 9 receiving yards in his only career game against the Giants. But, Travion Henderson this season has been that main target out of the running back corps for New England. And Travion Henderson over under 14 and a half receiving yards. He's gone over that line in half of his games this season, and he's had 10 plus receiving yards in 7 out of 12 of those games. Receptions, he's had 3 plus receptions in 5 out of 12 games this season. He's had 2 plus receptions in 8 out of 12 games this season, and 1 plus reception in 10 out of 12 games this season. Yeah, I think it's a decent look. There's limited information about it, so not necessarily something I'm looking to target, but if you like it, I mean, he has a better success rate with those receiving yards this season, over 14 and a half, than he does the receptions. But anyways, let's see. Let's get some of these comments here. Douglas receptions. Yeah, we already saw that one, didn't we? I can see Dart being sacked multiple times. It says, blessed up P, who on the Patriots leads the team in sacks. Let's go take a look. Sacks leader. Yeah, and if you guys have any questions, feel free to let me know. I'm going to try to find that real quick. And who did you say? Dart being sacked. So Patriots sack leaders this season. Let's go check that out. Defense, sacks. Harold Landry has 6.5 sacks this season, according to ESPN.com. I don't know how to spell this guy or pronounce this guy's name. I do my best to pronounce at least offensive player names correctly, but I'll spell it for you. Chaisson. He's tied with Landry with 6.5 sacks this season. And then it's Milton Williams, defensive end, 3.5 sacks. Ponder, 2 sacks. Hawkins, 1.5 sacks. And then there's a few guys with 1 sack this season for New England. Let me browse my notes here and just make sure that I didn't overlook anybody talking about anybody for New England, and I sure did. It's going to be those tight ends, right? Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper. The Giants have actually defended against the tight end position decently this season in regards to yards allowed per game. Before the week started, the Giants ranked 11th best in receiving yards allowed to tight ends. So when we're looking at the Giants' biggest vulnerability in regards to yards allowed compared to other teams in the league, so where they rank compared to other teams, the Giants' biggest vulnerability is going to be the receiving yards and receptions allowed to wide receivers. And then their next positional through the air defensive vulnerability is going to be the receptions allowed to running backs. So those are their biggest, vulnerabilities compared to other teams in the league. But, receptions allowed to tight ends, they didn't rank in the top 10 or bottom 10 in that category. So maybe that's the way to go here. But let's talk about it. Hunter Henry, over under 38.5 receiving yards. He's gone over that line in 7 out of 12 games this season. He's had 30-plus receiving yards in 8 out of 12 games, 20-plus receiving yards in 9 out of 12 games this season, and 10-plus receiving yards in 9 out of 12 games this season as well. So there's no difference between 20-plus and 10-plus in regards to Hunter Henry's success rate this season. He's achieved that the same amount of times. And then he's gone over the 38.5 receiving yard line in his only career game against the Giants. He's technically played 2 games against the Giants, but didn't record a target, so I don't even know if he played. But in the games where he was targeted, right, he's gone over the 38.5 receiving yards. He actually had 42 receiving yards and 3 receptions and 1 touchdown. Hunter Henry has more yards per catch in games that his team wins or ties rather than loses in 7 out of 9 career seasons. So if you like New England to win this game tonight, I do give Hunter Henry a better likelihood of going over those receiving yards based on that statistic. He leads New England in red zone targets with 13, like I mentioned. So through the air, I think that's going to be my first look here. I mean, it's easy to say that, right? Because he's the leader in targets, but that's not always the case. Let's say the Giants defended against that tight end position in regards to touchdowns allowed really well. Then I'd probably look somewhere else, you know. But I think my first and foremost favorite look is going to be the running backs getting into the end zone for New England and or Drake May, and then Hunter Henry. But let's talk about Hunter Henry's receptions. He's gone over the 3.5 reception line in half of his games this season. 3+ receptions in 7 out of 12 games this season. 2+ receptions in 9 out of 12 games this season. 1+ reception in every game this season, and he's gone over the he had 3 receptions in his only career game against the Giants, right? So he went under that. So, but if we took that hook off, and let's say we did do 3+ receptions tonight, we're looking at 7 out of 12 games this season. He's hit that. And he's hit that in his only career game against the Giants. Austin Hooper. Tight end for New England, over under 9.5 receiving yards. He's gone over that line in 8 out of 10 games this season. That's a pretty good success right there. He's had 5+ receiving yards, 5+ receiving yards in 9 out of 10 games this season. So just dropping it from 9.5, to 5+, gives us a 90% success right there instead of 80 at the original line. And then Austin Hooper has had 10+ receiving yards in 3 out of 4 career games against the Giants. The game that he did not, he had 6 receiving yards. So let's say we took Hooper for 5+ receiving yards tonight, 9 out of 10 games this season, and he's accomplished that in every career game against the Giants, which is 4. And then he's also had a touchdown in 1 out of 4 career games against the Giants. I was looking at Austin Hooper's splits, his grass versus turf splits, road versus away splits, and I saw some inconsistencies with that. So, anyways, Hooper over under 1.5 receptions. He's hit that line in half of his games this season. He's had 1+ reception in 9 out of 10 games this season, and he's gone over that 1.5 reception line in 2 out of 4 career games against the Giants. If we bring that down to 1+, he's hit that in every career game that he's played against the Giants. And then once again, 1+ in 9 out of 10 games this season. So there you have it for New England. Ramondre Stevenson has, let's see what Blessed Up P has to say here. Ramondre Stevenson has exceeded 4.5 first quarter rushing yards in 15 of his last 19 games. Wow. Yeah, I mean, that's a great statistic there, Blessed Up P, for those who, want to do the first quarter props and stuff like that, first half props, absolutely. And then that's something that I didn't get time to do is look up kicking props, but here we are. Great information there, Blessed Up Pete. Thank you so much. All right. Let's keep the ball rolling here. So we've already talked about rushing props. So the last thing that we have to do is talk about New England or the Giants' aerial attack and then defensive touchdowns. Anytime defensive touchdowns. Let's just cover that right here while we're at it. I looked at the history between these two teams. As I mentioned, they've played 14 all-time games against each other. And there have been 3 games in the past 10 meetings and 3 games in all meetings that these teams have played where there has been a defensive touchdown. New England has 3 all-time defensive touchdowns against the Giants, and the Giants have 2. There were actually 3 defensive touchdowns in one game back in 2019. And that was the only game in the last 5 games that these teams have played that had a defensive touchdown. New England scored 2, and the Giants scored 1. I don't know if either of these teams have had a defensive touchdown this season or have allowed one, but I do think that would definitely be valuable information. I'm sure you guys have some time to look that information up if you're interested in it anytime defensive touchdown prop. And while we're on the special teams, we had Blessed Up P mention something about a kicking statistic in there. And I did look up, New England has some good kickoff, a guy that averages a good amount of kickoff return yards. Before the week, Antonio Gibson ranked 7th best in the NFL in kickoff return yards averaged, and he has scored a kickoff return for a touchdown this season. And then Marcus Jones for New England ranked 6th in punt return yards averaged this season and had a punt return for a touchdown. And I think I mentioned Marcus Jones here for the first anytime touchdown score in one of these games for New England, right? In week 4, punt return for a touchdown. He was the first touchdown scorer for New England, second touchdown scorer of the game. So that could be, a sleepy play here, especially if the Giants have allowed a punt return touchdown, So definitely I'm interested in looking that up probably while I'm off the air. And then, just to mention, the Giants have a guy, I don't know how to pronounce his name, Olszewski, ranks 10th in kickoff return yards average this season. But, let's go ahead and touch up on the aerial attack for the Giants here and call it a session here. All right. Darts. I noticed that New England, I mentioned that they ranked 2nd before the week started in rushing yards allowed to opposing teams. New England's much more vulnerable to passing yards allowed per game. They rank 17th in that category. New England accumulates more rushing yards per game relative to other teams in the league, though, rather than passing. But so I think it's going to be, key for Dart to be able to run the ball and or pass effectively in this game. I think he's definitely the X factor for the Giants tonight. Anyways, New England has allowed, before the week started, the 10th most passing yards to quarterbacks. Jackson Dart, rookie quarterback for the New York Giants, over under 205.5 passing yards. He's gone over that line in only 2 out of 7 games this season that he's had a pass attempt in. There were a couple games where he had a rush attempt or 2. I'm not going to count that against him. He's had 175-plus passing yards in 6 out of 7 games this season, in games where he had a pass attempt. He's never played against New England. He has more passing yards per attempt on the road than at home this season, which is a favorable trend, considering he's on the road today. And then he has more passing yards per attempt when his team loses this season. So I do give Jackson Dart a bigger likelihood of reaching the 206-plus passing yard line if the Giants lose today based on that trend. It's a small sample size. So, when we have just a small sample size, typically the bigger the sample size, the better. But, do what you want with that information. Anyways, he has more passing yards per attempt on grass than turf, which is a bad trend. If you're playing the game script where the Giants are trailing in this game in the later stages, maybe they are forced to pass the ball a little bit more in this one. And we said that, he has more passing yards per attempt when his team loses this season. But if you're playing the game where the Giants are kind of up and controlling, the game. Maybe he doesn't. Over under passing touchdowns. He's had 2+ passing touchdowns. I don't know what his passing touchdown line is at, but I'll cover, the 1, 2, and 3. Usually it's 1.5. But yeah, Dart has had 2+ passing touchdowns in 2 out of 7 games this season. In the games that he had a pass attempt, 1+ passing touchdown in 6 out of 7 games this season in games that he had a pass attempt, and 3+ passing touchdowns in only 1 out of 7 games in which he had a pass attempt in, and he's never played against New England. Blessed Up P really likes to talk. Okay, yeah, we'll go down to Theo Johnson. Let me. I know you like specifically Blessed Up P to talk about these pass attempts, so let's cover that real quick, and then let's go look at Theo Johnson. I looked at these pass attempts specifically for you, man, because you're always, asking about passing attempts. So I had a little bit of extra time to look that up. Over under 30.5 passing attempts for Dart. He's gone over that line in 3 out of 7 games this season. And the Giants lost all 3 games that Dart went over those passing attempts. So if you like the Giants to lose today, you got that working for you. 2 out of 3 of those games were on the road. He's averaged 29.14 pass attempts this season, and the Patriots are allowing an average of 32.91 passing attempts per game, which equals out to 31.028 pass attempts for Dart. So I think that's real close. I find it interesting that him and May have the same pass attempts line. And I did the same calculation with May, and May, has, just with that equation, has a better chance of going over those pass attempts tonight. But I think script matters too, game script, But yeah, let's go look at Theo Johnson. I see that you mentioned Theo Johnson there, Blessed Up P. Over under, let's see, you're talking specifically about his receptions. Now, New England has allowed the most receptions to tight ends this season. So I'm pretty sure that's going to be New England's biggest flaw in regards to defending against anything pass related. Their second biggest flaw is receptions allowed to running backs. Okay. But yeah, that's their first biggest flaw. So I'm concerned about that. If I'm the Giants tonight, I'm looking for Theo Johnson, and to exploit that, at least to get him some, a good size of targets. He does rank second on this New York Giants football team in targets. Okay. Over under 3.5 receptions. He's only gone over that line in 3 out of 12 games this season, but he has had 3+ receptions in 9 out of 12 games this season, 2+ receptions in 10 out of 12 games this season. That's about all the information I have about his receptions. But his receiving yards, New England has allowed before the week started, they allowed the 6th most receiving yards to tight ends. Theo Johnson over under 32.5. And he's gone over that line in half of his games this season. So a bigger success rate going over those receiving yards than the reception line. He's had 20+ receiving yards in 9 out of 12 games this season, 10+ receiving yards in 11 out of 12 games this season. And he's had more yards per catch in games that his team loses rather than wins in both career seasons. He's also the leader for the Giants in red zone targets. So if you think that the Giants lose tonight, I think that there is a better chance that Theo Johnson goes over those receiving yards, which probably means he'll go over the receptions if you think the Giants lose tonight. I'm not saying that he won't if they win, but just based on that statistic, right? Once again, it's a small sample size, 2 out of 2 career seasons. I mentioned he's the leader in red zone target share for the Giants. So that makes me, just kind of want to, I think now's a good time for me to browse to see where the Patriots have allowed the most touchdowns relative to other teams in the league. I actually already did. And it looks like touchdowns allowed to wide receivers is their biggest vulnerability. Now, you may see that, running backs have more touchdowns against New England than wide receivers, but relative to other teams in the league, right? That's where New England's biggest flaw is. In fact, they've allowed the fourth most wide receiver touchdowns. So that's probably where I'm looking for a New York Giant tonight to score a touchdown. Let's, I do just want to mention real quick that Daniel Bellinger is another tight end here for New England, and he's the third leader in red zone targets for the Giants with 5. He has played a game against New England and did not score a touchdown in that game, but just worth mentioning. So let's talk about, the wide receivers here for the Giants and get on out of here. So New England, they did not rank in the top 10 or bottom 10 in regards to receiving yards or receptions allowed to wide receivers when I looked at the beginning of the week. Wan'Dale Robinson, over under 58.5 receiving yards. He's gone over that line in 5 out of 12 games this season. He's had 50-plus receiving yards in half of his games this season, 40-plus in 75% of his games this season, 30-plus receiving yards in 10 out of 12 games this season. He did not go over this receiving line in his only career game against New England. He had 26 receiving yards and did not score a touchdown. I looked at his grass versus turf splits and those other splits. I saw some inconsistencies there. So it's not like I saw anything where, he does really well whenever he's on turf or grass, just kind of up and down. He's the second leader for the Giants in red zone targets with 6. So I think he's a big consideration. I talked about how that would be my first look is a Giants wide receiver, to get an anytime touchdown. And I don't like the fact that he doesn't have one in that one career game against New England, but I do like the fact that he's the second leader for the Giants in red zone targets. Over under 5.5 receptions. He has a better success rate going over those receptions this season than those 58.5 receiving yards. Wan'Dale Robinson's gone over the 5.5 reception line in 7 out of 12 games this season. He's had 5-plus receptions in 8 out of 12 games this season, 4-plus receptions in 9 out of 12 games, 3-plus in 11 out of 12 games this season. And he did not go over that line, that 5.5 reception line in his only career game against New England. He had 4 receptions. So, based on, statistics, I mean, usually the lower you take a line, right, the better probability, but that you have of hitting, but the odds will decrease. But just based on success rate with the original lines, I'd have to lean more towards him going over the 5.5 receptions. He does lead this team in target share by a good amount. He has 102 total targets this season compared to Theo Johnson, who ranks second. Theo Johnson, who has 60 total targets. And then Darius Slayton, over under 32.5 receiving yards. He's gone over that line in 4 out of 9 games this season, 30-plus receiving yards in 6 out of 9 games this season, 20-plus receiving yards in 8 out of 9 games this season. And he's never gone over that line in any career game against New England. He's played 2 career games against New England and had 16 and 32 receiving yards. He did not score a touchdown in either one of those games, and he has inconsistencies with those splits that I like to look at. Darius Slayton, over under 2.5 receptions. He's gone over that line in 5 out of 9 games this season. Better success rate with Slayton's reception line than the receiving line. He's had 2-plus receptions in 7 out of 9 games this season, 1-plus reception in 8 out of 9 games this season. And he did go over that reception line in 1 out of 2 career games against New England. He had 2 receptions in one game and then 3 receptions in another game. And then Isaiah Hodgins, over under. I think this might be the sleepy player of the game here. Blessed up P, what do you think about Hodgins? I know you're a Giants fan. I see his over-under on receiving yards is 23.5. He's gone over that in both of the games that he's played in this season. And in his only career game against New England, he had one reception for 12 receiving yards and a touchdown. He also had a game against New England that he wasn't targeted in, so I'm not going to count that against him. The reception line for Hodgins, 2.5 over under. He's gone over that line in half of his games this season, 1 out of 2, 2+ receptions in both games this season. And then once again, in that only career game against New England, he had one reception for 12 receiving yards and one touchdown. So that's probably going to be my favorite sleepy anytime touchdown score tonight is Hodgins. How do we feel about that, Ivan? I mean, that's real sleepy, right? How many touchdowns does he even have this year? Any? One. He has one. So it'd be a real sleepy play. I just like the fact that he has a career touchdown against the Patriots. And I mentioned that would be the first place I would look for an anytime touchdown score based on statistics, right? Is that's where New England's biggest vulnerability is in regards to touchdowns allowed. I mean, other than that, for New England, they've only allowed one rushing touchdown to quarterbacks this season. We talked about Dart. I mean, I feel like Dart can maybe impose his will on anybody, 6 out of 7 games, Dart's had a rushing touchdown in. That's impressive, I'm really interested to see if Jackson Dart gets into the end zone tonight for New England. But look, New England's only allowed 2 rushing touchdowns to running backs this season. One receiving touchdown to a running back. And then receiving touchdowns allowed to tight ends. New England has allowed 4, which is kind of middle of the pack there. So if you like Theo Johnson, I could see that. We talked about how he is the red zone target leader. So those would be the guys. But out of Wan'Dale Robinson and Slayton, probably Wan'Dale Robinson, right? Wan'Dale Robinson is the leader of this team in target share, the second leader in red zone target share. And, Wan'Dale Robinson has 3 touchdowns this season. Theo Johnson has 5, by the way. And then let me just see if we have any other things to cover here. I think that's about it. Let's see if we had any questions here. In games, Darts, and he hasn't hit Hodgins much at all. Jameis Winston has, though. I don't know why Dart's starting today. Yeah, man, that would be cool. I love Jameis Winston. I like Dart, though, too. I think he's a fun player to watch, electric. He's got that swagger, So, but, yeah, anyways, my prediction here, I don't know. New England's favored by 7.5, right? I kind of like the Giants to cover. I don't know about win. Over under 46.5. Give me the under. That'd be my prediction. Once again, I'm not here to necessarily give you guys picks. If you're tailing, please do so at your own risk. I'm just giving you guys some information so you don't have to do as much research as I did. So, anyways, good luck today, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. Blessed Up P. Can we all give him a round of applause? Thank you so much for all of the statistics that you've been typing into chat. I really appreciate it. I know everybody else does as well. The next time I see you guys will be on Thursday for the Thursday night football game. We have my Dallas Cowboys. My Dallas Cowboys at Detroit Lions. So I'll be breaking that game down on Thursday. Once again, thank you guys so much for joining today. And a special thank you to our sponsors, BetUS, MyBookie.ag, Walmart.com, Open Goal, the MLB and NFL Pro Shops, and W Energy Drinks. All right, everybody, take care. Good luck today. How about them Cowboys? Thank you, Ivan.
This non-casual podcast may not be reproduced, retransmitted, or reused without the authorized written consent of the Not Move Podcast Network. Thank you, and we hope you enjoyed today's broadcast.